But let's get into this Gorrenrock Survivors preview number 2.
This set of previews might be the most interesting previews we've had yet.
Yeah.
And I don't mean that like they're the most powerful, but just I think they're all very cool. And, you know, as I'll make a point a couple times later, I'm sure, because I like to reiterate myself. Uh, on Tuesday, I was saying, like, I wish that there was something more for Time Hopper to be doing.
Mm-hmm.
And I think two of these cards fit right into that category.
Absolutely. Like, I think the deck I played on Tuesday night, this slots right into that deck. Right? Like, it can slot right in. But let's talk about the Summon Emberroot Lizard. It's a ready spell with main action.
You should see if you can zoom this in some. I'm watching it on Twitch, and it's
a little small. Okay.
I mean, it might be okay on other people's monitors.
How's that? Is that better?
Yeah, much better.
Okay. So main action, 1 basic for book tax. I don't mind this as a book tax. I think this is fine.
It's definitely good enough that I think it deserves to have an additional cost of some kind.
Right. And then it's once you've got the spell in play, it's main action, exhaust, 1 nature, class die. Place an Emberroot Lizard Conjuration onto your battlefield. Flavor text is your hell, drawn from the depths of my heart. Cool text. One thing I want to note here, and correct me if I'm wrong, but have we ever seen unique art on the books?
Yes.
Really?
Yeah, they're all different slightly.
Oh, man. I guess I got to pay more
attention. They look really, really similar.
Okay. This was the first time I noticed it. This looked really unique.
That one is much more pronounced, where you like see the lizard.
Right.
But if you look at like the snake book, it's got a snake on it. If you look at the
I'll go take a look at them.
It's like small little things, right? Like, sure. But they pretty much all have a weird pencil drawn picture of whatever they are.
All right, so here's our Emberroot Lizard, little fire dragon.
It's dope looking. Too.
It's so sweet. Conjuration battlefield. It's got a conjuration count of 3, so we can have 3 of these on the battlefield at once. It's got an ability. Well, it's an 0/2/0, so 0 attack, 2 life, 0 recover. Funny enough, this can slot into Shepherd decks still.
Right. Funny that 0 power is now better than 1 power.
It's so crazy. And then it says Ignite. When this unit is declared as an attacker, if it has 1 or more status tokens on it, add 1 to its attack value for the remainder of the turn. If you do, you may deal 1 damage to another target unit. So here we are, with essentially a 1 dice summon round over round. That's good for 2 damage, as long as it's good for 2 damage. How you spread it out or how you do it.
It's a 1 dice summon plus some extra work. Sure. It's not just a 1 dice summon, right?
Sure.
Like,
yeah.
It is a 0/2 for 1 dice, but as soon as you put in a little work, then it starts becoming valuable.
I want, obviously Time Hopper just, immediately screams, like, play this with Time Hopper, right?
Yeah, this is what I was saying, perfect example of something that Time Hopper does that you can, it doesn't mind being aggressive.
Right.
It really takes good use of the counter, and it's just really good. And to Warrior's point, it's also very good with Lulu.
Yep, and I think Gilder's a secondary happy place for it.
Gilder, I think it's a lot worse. I mean, I love Gilder, right? Like, I think Gilder might be the best summon in the game. But
it's so funny, man, because like I remember last year, like I hate Gilder. It's no good.
I was wrong.
Yeah,
I mean,
yeah, the ping nightmare is a real thing, Warrior, for sure.
But the reason I think it's specifically this is worse with Gilder is because it's so much harder to control the inheritance than the other effects we talked about, Lulu,
right?
Time Hopper.
Like, you got to figure the best way to clear Gilders is also the best way to clear Emberroot Lizard, right? And that's just Meteor. Like you just meteor these 2 life boards and they get wiped out.
Yeah, I mean, Meteor's a good card. I think that like trying to play only things that don't die to Meteor is not good.
No, I agree with that. I'm not saying that, but I'm just saying like
this
it's the same answers.
I think that we were talking about Tuesday also how they couldn't really print another great nature summon, and I think that this proves that I was wrong, because what I was saying then was like they can't print another like just no-brainer auto-include great nature unit. And that's not what this is, right? Like,
No.
this is a great nature unit, but it's not an auto-include because it requires that extra work. So this fits perfectly into like the design that I think they wanted, where sure, you could play Frostback Bear alongside this just because Frostback Bear is good, but you're still an Emberroot Lizard deck. Like, you're not a Frostback Bear deck with Emberroot Lizard. It doesn't go the other way.
Yeah, it's a very much got a build around you sort of feel to it, right? Like, you have to be supporting.
Yeah, and it's not... Like, you could play Lulu, Emberroot Lizard, and Frostback Bear, and no other sources of counters, and it's probably good enough because the Lulu ability is so good on Emberroot Lizard.
Right.
But you're still committing then your Phoenixborn and the Phoenixborn loyalty card to this summon, right? Like, if you're making your decision in that fashion, where you're like, I want to play Frostback Bear and Emberroot Lizard,
right?
And that's fine. Like, that deck might be good, but essentially, like, they just couldn't print like a 2/2 for 2/2 for 2 or another 1/1 that's good for 1 in nature and just like have it be okay,
right?
Because nature is already so good. But this card is just so cool because it is very good.
Yeah, it's super good. I think that this is the kind of thing that I get excited for in Ashes. I don't get excited about necessarily big, high dice cost units because while those are explosive and they can do explosive things on the battlefield, they don't necessarily lead you to the promised land of a victory. They can, right? Like, it's not like you can't slam a Grave Knight and win, but like, this is the kind of thing that you can do round over round for a single dice and have a meaningful threat. Like, we talked about this with 4-book Aerodel, right? Like,
yeah, I think this is generally a 2 dice unit.
Right.
It's closer to 2 dice than it is to 1 dice anyway. Like, sometimes you'll get in there for halvesies, like a dice and a half.
Sure.
I guess it's usually a dice and a half. If you're playing Time Hopper, because I would count the 1/1 that Time Hopper makes as half a dice.
Sure. Yeah. Okay. I just think this is cool to see another nature summon, and not see it be a big summon. Right.
I was really curious how they were going to print anything reasonably playable, and not just like break the format.
Well, I think they definitely did it, right?
Yeah, I think that this is good. I think it's going to see play, but I don't think that it's going to make, like, Emberroot Lizard is not going to be the reason that everyone plays all nature all the time.
Yeah,
that was what they needed to avoid,
right?
And I think they did that. And this card's cool, and it's gorgeous, and it's like well designed.
It'll definitely be in a competitive deck. You can guarantee it.
Yeah, the combination of like summon Time Hopper then attack with Emberroot Lizard is very good.
Right. And Hopper, right? Like, you just get
yeah, if you you get to attack with the Hopper if you want, but the Emberroot Lizard, because of how Time Hopper works, like, one of the problems with Time Hopper was that the only thing good it could do was put counters on itself. In order to do that, you have to draw the second book. But you can first 5 Lizard book and Hopper book and already do the thing that you want to do.
Right.
And then when you draw the second Hopper book later, you can still go like Bunny, put counter on Bunny, put counter on Emberroot Lizard and attack, right?
Yeah,
you don't lose out on the value by having to commit all your counters to the Emberroot Lizard.
No, absolutely not. So, and then I think it continues to pair nicely with Flash Strike to make even more value out of these.
Right, and with the next card that we're going to talk about.
That's right. Okay, so let's move on to the next card. We have, well, not the next card. This is Survival of the Fittest.
This is the card I meant.
Oh, really? We'll talk about this in just a second. Survival of the Fittest is an action spell with discard. This is a main and a side action, so it's your whole turn. It's a nature class, time class, and a basic. It says, destroy all units with no tokens on them, and no alteration spells attached to them. And the flavor text is, the desert teaches us resilience. So, a couple of things about this card, Neil, before I let you go on your hot take. There is a dinosaur in this picture. That's what the Emberroot Lizard is clearly on. It looks like a dinosaur, or it's a dragon.
Yeah, I mean, it just looks like Archosaurus. Yeah,
maybe it is Archosaurus. That's a good point. Anyways, very cool artwork here. This is a weird card to me. So I want to hear your take, and then I'll add my take. Because I told the Discord, because the Discord was blowing up about this card yesterday, and I said, I'm saving my hot take for the stream. So
okay. So to start with the artwork that you were talking about, this is a metaphor for Ashes as a whole, where cards that cost 1 are better than cards that cost 3.
Right. Absolutely. Hands down. Yeah.
Survival of the cheaper dice cost is like that tiny lizard is way better than Archosaurus Mount.
Yep.
Outside of like nonsense, I think this card is very powerful. It's not like the end all be all, because it doesn't kill exhausted units.
Right. Does it kill units with wound tokens on them?
Well, that's a lot of times, like, if the units are wounded already, they're either going to die or you don't care about them.
Sure.
Like, the exception being, like, the nonsense I was doing on Tuesday with
Gorrenrock.
Right. Because you, like, still care about it, and you probably care about it more if it's wounded.
Right.
But when you think about how the turns actually play out, a lot of times if something takes damage, it's either going to die because your attack was good, or it's going to die because it gets festered, or it's like already attacked and exhausted and you're just kind of like spending your free attacks into it.
Mm-hmm.
And in all those cases, like that's not where Survival of the Fittest would want to hit it anyway. Like it'd be nice if you cast Survival of the Fittest to like kill a big unit, you pick up like one of their crappy guys on the side that already attack.
Right.
But most of the time this is like an early round play, or just like something that you force your opponent to play around by having it in your deck list.
Yeah, so Inquisitor brings up a good point. So the big value moments are when you can play a top of round for a one-sided board wipe. I agree with that, but traditionally, I mean, I'm going to preface this with yes. If you're doing all of the things that you need to do to protect your units from Survival of the Fittest, then yes. Damja, I think you're right on. I think you've hit the nail on the head. I think the floor on this card is really low.
This is a card that you should like it's extremely powerful, right? So like you're right about the floor. The ceiling is through the roof, right?
Absolutely.
It's obviously like what Inquisitor says. It's bonkers when you like 4-for-1 them or whatever. Like one-sided Wrath is crazy,
right?
But depending on the first step is the meta. So we're going into a meta of Ember Root Lizards. You don't want to play this card, right? Like
no.
When your opponent's plan is already to have counters and stuff everywhere, like this card is just garbo.
Right.
If you don't think that's the meta, and you have a deck that can utilize one-sided Wrath, this is definitely good enough to get there.
I think
it synergizes with Hopper, because Hopper gives you a bunch of free counters.
Yep.
I think it is another great thing to do with Accelerate.
Mm-hmm.
Similar to Meteor, though it's not quite as crazy as Meteor because it doesn't require double power side.
Right.
The costs are actually pretty easy on it.
It probably enables the Accelerate to actually meditate into dice for post Survival of the Fittest play, whereas in the Meteor play, it's just giving you the hero.
Right. Just it being like main end side makes Accelerate do stuff, right? Like if we're talking about the deck you're playing this in, like maybe you have Time Hopper, so you get to like Accelerate, make a Time Hopper, counter up your one vulnerable unit, and then play Survival of the Fittest and kill everything.
Right.
But your own guys, like that kind of stuff. But Damja's right that like this card is wildly variable.
Right.
But it's really cool. And it's just another one of those things that I've been looking for that promotes the status token stuff.
Right.
And
I mean, here's what I'm going to say. I think somewhere along the line, somebody is going to play a Survival of the Fittest to like 7-for-1 somebody. And it's going to look like the greatest card in the world in that scenario, right?
And it will be. Like there are going to be game states where your best draw by far is Survival of the Fittest.
Sure.
Assuming that that's the deck you're playing. Like if you can't just, again, this is a card you can't just like put into whatever.
Right.
But if your deck wants to do it, then
I would say there is an opportunity to put it in decks where you want like you're going to play units and use those units proactively, meaning because they're exhausted, they would not get, they wouldn't take survival of the fittest damage, right?
Right.
And
That's one way to think about it. Is that you don't have to be playing status counter stuff
right,
because you can just like you know swing like imagine you're playing Brian's deck or something like it,
right,
and you do the thing where you're like uh Raptor Herder and then turn to attack for 8 or whatever,
right,
and then they play a knight and your next play is Survival of the Fittest.
right,
Like you're still only getting them for 1, but it's still really good.
right.
Uh,
I mean, I think that Inquisitor made a good point that should be brought up here as well. He said, it looks pretty good in Rin as well, and I think Rin has a nice job of protecting the unit it wants to protect, but I don't think Rin has enough tools to have this like explosive survival of the fittest type play.
I think it's fine.
It's
I mean,
okay.
it's just it gives you like you can play Accelerate, make an ice buff on your guy that doesn't have any that would die to it normally, and then play Survival, and that's good.
Right.
I mean, it's that specific interaction is just fine. It's the same as any other counter thing or whatever. It's always in play. But
Right.
if you're playing time, you also have like the option of Accelerate, just like time dice power and then survival, because
Right.
time dice power can put a thing on yours and remove a thing from theirs,
Right.
and so it protects one of yours and makes one of theirs vulnerable potentially.
Yep.
um
I mean,
so
I think the card will see play. I just don't know how good it is and whether it's good enough. At the end of the day, that's all my hot take.
I don't think that you can build a deck assuming that survival of the fittest is always going to be good for you.
Yeah.
I think you can build a deck that is good, and there will be times when you want to draw survival of the fittest, so you'll have a couple copies in your pile.
Right.
Because if you draw this in round 2 or whatever, and you just hold it until it's good, like that's not very different than Meteor or whatever.
Right. And I think there's probably a 4-book archetype with a Phoenixborn, whether that's with Lulu or somebody else, where survival of the fittest is just always good because your units are always set up to be protected, like we were talking about. It's built.
That your units being protected all the time isn't enough to make this always good.
Well, I mean, what I mean by that is it's always good in the same way that top around Neils are almost always good.
But it's not that, because what if they're playing a deck with counters?
Sure.
Then it's blanked.
Okay, yeah.
So
fair enough, but I mean, outside of that same sort of, if the meta ends up that way, to your point earlier,
right,
then it falls way down. But if the meta
going into the first tournament after these are released, I would not play Survival of the Fittest.
Yeah, it's a card that seems like it will only tech in when the meta has settled and not everybody's playing status counters. All right, so let's let's move on from Survival of the Fittest. No, of course we said the same thing about Jericho, right? With season 1 Shuffle Bus, we had Jericho, or season 2 Shuffle Bus had Jericho in it, and we thought there'd be a whole bunch of Jerichos, and there was one. So,
right, this is a little different in that, like, we're already talking about a card that fits into a niche, and the smaller you make that niche is
yeah, for sure. I still think this is a cool design, so I give a lot of kudos to Nick and company, because I think this is a neat design. I think it's a neat place to interact, and to your point made earlier, it also further enables status tokens as a sort of product.
This is not the end-all be-all. It's not Meteor, it's not Neil. But it is potentially very powerful.
Yeah, damn, that's really what a high-level player that has, a 1 of Survival of Fittest in their deck or a 2 of Survival of Fittest in their deck.
Spilling on myself.
They draw... Get a drinking problem over there again.
Yep.
And I'm gonna find an airplane gif, and every time you do that, I'm just gonna cut over to an airplane.
Yeah, I was thinking the same thing actually.
I need that. I need a production board. Can anybody give me a production board? Like, if anybody wants to donate anything, I need a stream deck. But anyways, the point being here is that I think it's a cool design. It's good for the meta to further diversify the meta just by the card existing. And it may never do what you want, and it may do everything you want it to do. So, But Damja, to your point, like it's may sit in your hand. I mean, I think top level players have cards like that in their deck all the time, and they're able to evaluate whether that card is good in a particular matchup on the fly really quickly, and decide whether or not to use it as meditate or just discard it at the end of the round. To draw a new hand. I don't think you're gonna. You need to be able to evaluate survival of the fittest and whether it's good for you going into the next round when it may be at its best. Right?
This doesn't feel like a 3-of card in any deck.
No.
Like there's not going to be a survival of the fittest deck. There's just going to be a deck that has 1 or 2 of these because there's potentially like a game breaking situation where it like wins you the game by itself.
Well, and you could potentially first 5 it.
It doesn't feel like that kind of card either.
I know
it's because
but you could
you definitely don't want first 5 cards that are potentially blank.
Mm-hmm.
So it's just like you want to draw it and hope that it's good in round 3-ish, I would guess. Maybe round 2, and if it's not, then like you said, you meditate it away or you discard it to your draw step, whatever.
So one of the things that I think is really hurts this card a lot is just the current existing meta of like root armored knights.
It's funny because Gilder is so prominent right now. Right. All those times that we talk about Gilder dying and like the inheritance counter not mattering, it actually matters a ton now.
Yeah, right. It absolutely matters.
So you can't just like put it willy-nilly. You have to be like, oh, well, I guess this inheritance counter is actually really important if you have time nature.
And so an important rules interaction, because Skak ruled in on this on the Discord about this with Gilder as well. When you survival of the fittest, the Gilder inheritance cannot save a unit that was already destroyed by the survival of the fittest. So the destroy effect here, because it's not dealing damage, and so you don't have to choose order of resolution of damage, it just kills everything instantly. I
believe that's how it works. But that's dumb that it works that way.
Yeah. So the Gilder
they should either all go incrementally or none of them should.
I know, but that's what Skak said on Discord yesterday. That it's there since there's no rule interaction that talks about destroying units one at a time. When you have a destroy all like this, they all die instantly. So the inheritance token just goes on a 0 unit or a unit that does survive the survival. All right, so let's move on. We've got one more card to cover. This is one that I think is pretty cool. This is Inflame. It's an alteration spell. Attaches to a unit. Side action in a nature class. Very cheap. I love cheap. We talked about how great cheap is.
This is already better than like every other alteration.
Well, I'm not sure I'm going to go that far yet. But it gives us attack +1 and threatening. This unit must be blocked if able. This part is really cool. This card right here is going on Sonic Swordsman's all day, folks. You heard it here first. Yeah. Warrior, you and I are on the same page. 100%.
This just goes on literally anything, and it's good every time.
Right.
Like, it's... all those times that, like, I was talking about how bad alterations are, and, like, I compare this only to the, like, offensive ones, because root armor is still probably better, and fadeaway is still probably better, and all that kind of nonsense. But this, compared to every other power-increasing one, with the exception of possibly explosive growth, this is way better.
Here's what I'd say, Inquisitor. Not everyone gets to be Herald, because you can only play 3 Inflames. I guess you can play 3 Polarity Mages to turn it into 6, essentially. But, I mean...
but you don't get to pick.
Yeah.
Herald gets to pick what it kills, not...
Yeah. I think Herald... I think you could play Inflame in Herald, and then you get kind of a quasi-second pick removal, right? Like, if the games say to set up that way. I don't think that's unheard of, but
it sounds like you're losing a lot of value on one of your 2 things by doing that. But it's probably fine. I think this card is very good. It makes your Frostback Bear kill their Frostback Bear every time, and it runs all your dudes into just like makes everything into a Grave Knight, and the checkboxes that I have for the alterations are, one, it like has to be a side action to be good.
Right.
Which this does. It has to be cheap, which this is.
Yep.
And on top of giving you the power buff, it has to like make up for its card cost somehow.
Right.
And this usually will. I think. Like,
yeah, no doubt about this. This is going to allow units to punch above their curve. Right, and it's going to allow them to, it can force exhaustion, right? Like, you can take Salamander Monk, attack Phoenixborn Face, and force an exhaustion of a unit they don't want to exhaust. Like, it's perfectly fine to be used as a forced exhaustion tool for 1 dice.
I think that's like the worst you could be doing, but
it's still not bad.
It's okay.
Yeah.
Like, I think that it's not hard to engineer a situation where this will be a gotcha to your opponent that's like banking on a Phoenix Form Guard.
Right.
You know, like there will be times when you like.
Well, it's not going to protect a Phoenix Form Guard.
I mean, like I have a Frostbite Bear. You have Frostbite Bear. I have something, and I'm planning to attack your Frostbite Bear, and you're going to block with your Phoenix Born to save your bear.
Right.
So I play this and attack your Phoenix Born, and your bear is killed by that.
Brian, for sure, Root Armored and Alert Knights, this is not an answer to those at all. Just
right. I don't think this is an auto include in every natural deck. I don't think that this is like game breaking. I just think it's good. I think it's like this is the kind of thing that alterations need to look like if people are going to play them.
Here's what I'll say, Brian. I think this is one of those kinds of cards that if you don't want to play Grave Knight and you're worried about Snake, I think this is a way to make one of your knights deal with Snake in round 1. Even if the Snake gets Root Armor. Now, here's what I'm going to keep. I keep going back to this, and we keep talking about all this alteration play. Is there going to be enough influx of alterations at this point, Neil, where beyond hard removal, some of the like targeted alteration removal stuff will start to see play? So what I mean by that
absolutely not.
You don't think the spell will see
100% no. Because the new ones that we've seen printed, this one and Spark and whatever the other one is that only goes on allies, they're all side actions. So you get to play them, get your advantage out of them immediately by attacking before your opponent would ever get a chance to remove them.
Right.
So there's no point in trying to remove them because they've already done their work.
Sure.
Right? So the ones that you care about are the ones that give you over time advantage, and this is not one of those. This most likely is just going to like trade for a guy right away.
Maybe.
I mean, if they keep it in play, then sure, I guess it's okay to kill it. But like, I think you're still in the same situation where because none of these new ones they printed protect the guy, you're better off just trying to kill the guy.
Well, but the issue you have with trying to kill the guy sometimes is Golden Veil, right? I mean, Golden Veil is a real thorn in the side of trying to kill guys.
Right, but like, so let's talk about the situation where that happens. So I have a knight of some, like, essentially, I have a Hammer Knight. Let's say Hammer Knight, because that's like the most basic one. I have a Hammer Knight, I play Inflame, and I attack. Well, you're forced to block. I do my damage. I get my ping off the Hammer Knight off of the Inflame because you had to block.
Mm-hmm.
And then I pass to you. So my knight, maybe takes a couple damage back. You trying to kill the Inflame at that point, like, do you really feel good about spending dice on just the Inflame?
No, I don't.
Right.
But I think
that's the issue, is that situation is going to be the situation every time with things like this. Because the Inflame itself, after your first attack with it, is so much weaker that it's like not worth your dice to pitch it.
I do think that having a 1 or 2 of Dispel in some lists for dealing with Root Armor only makes Inflame better. So like if I'm playing Inflame, I could see playing Dispels to get rid of Root Armors for value. That way my Inflames have value.
I think that if you are dead to Root Armor, you should have an answer to Root Armor. But I think that's a different conversation.
Sure.
I don't think that killing any of this or Spark or I cannot remember the name of the one that was previewed last week, but or even the Overkill one, like it's just not enough value to spend any dice in a card on.
Holy Relic or Power Through. Yeah.
Right.
I think this is interesting because here's what I have over the last few weeks I've been intentionally trying to build Power 3 decks, and every time I get to the end of a Power 3 deck, I have like 36 cards in the deck, and I end up cutting the Power 3s.
Right, because it's not good.
It's not good enough. That is
right. Okay, so sure that's fine. Power Through is better than 50% of the card pool.
Right.
It's just not good enough.
Yeah.
I think this is good enough.
Maybe.
I think it's in, one, it has a nature on it, so that automatically makes it better than everything else. But
I mean, a lot of decks are Divine Nature already because of Sarah Source Mount and just
right,
the colors.
This is a removal tool, and the other thing is
Right.
That's the difference, right? Like, and again, I guess when I say it has a nature on it, so it's better than everything else, that's also kind of a downside because the nature pool is so deep that this might end up being like overpowered thing.
You're thinking of hunting weapons from last week, by the way.
Right. Okay. So hunting weapons and inflame both, I think, are good, but because they're in nature, like they may, like you said, not be good enough because there's so many great nature cards that they might just be the 34th card or whatever.
Right. So like where I have been landing on power through is been trying to play power through on Battle Seer, right? Like because of the quick strike, it gives Battle Seer an extra ability like other knights would have just ingrained, but now she's a 4/4 with quick strike, so she's got 2 abilities for that 1 extra dice. But you run into the same problem, right? Where you run into the same problem you run into with root armor knights and all of these other things, where if your opponent has an answer to these things, you're just 2 for 1.
Right. That's just the nature of alterations.
Right. And so my point being is that what makes root armor so good is the turn you play knight, you can spend the back half of your turn to play this thing. Like you have to be very intentional about having inflame set up in the right way to like.
Root armor is a sideboard card.
Yeah.
Right. Like
absolutely.
Root armor is not like an aggressive play. It's just in there because some decks are like very bad against it.
Mm-hmm.
And that's how those first 5 cards should be. Talking about these like power increasing ones, it's a little different.
Brian adds he also thinks it could be very good on Sarasaurus. I think Sarasaurus. Fundamentally, I think Sarasaurus is a good card. I think fundamentally it is weaker than Frostback Bear. And
I think it's only not good. I think Inflame is only not good on like the 4 power guys because then they're already big enough.
Yeah, I mean anything over beyond a standard knight, anything above a knight, it's not worth playing.
Right. And I don't think that any of the alterations, the power increasing alterations, are good on knights except for this one.
Yeah, this one seems really good on knights
because this one gets you the trigger.
Yeah,
where like it gets you a Hammer Knight trigger. I guess it's not good on Grave Knight because it like
already has it.
It already has it, and it doesn't care about the +1 attack because 4 essentially kills everything that's playable.
The one that Grave Knight likes is Holy Relics, or not Holy Relics, Power Through, because you get double PD damage and kill you.
I just don't think it matters.
No, like, it's just like if you wanted to play one on Grave Knight, that's the one to play on it. I still think Root Armor or Grave Knight is still the best thing for Grave Knight. Just make
sure. I mean, again, Root Armor is there just in case the deck you're playing is bad against it. If we're ignoring the dice cost and just saying what's the best one to put on Grave Knight, it's Massive Growth, right? Like, but I don't think it's worth.
You can't play Massive Growth on Grave Knight. It's got too much power.
Oh, okay.
You can't play Massive Growth on anything over.
I don't think it's worth the dice to increase Grave Knight's power from 4 to 5.
Sure.
I don't think that there's enough times that break point in life on a unit matters. Like, I guess if my opponent has only Gorrenrock Brawler or Archosaurus in play, then I would do it. But
yeah,
in general, like all the 3/4 knights, Inflame is great on. Most of them have a trigger when they kill something, and this forces that to happen. The ones that don't, I guess, is it just Battle Seer? Because this is really good on that too, because the quick strike just kills anything.
Right. So the only one that it's not super great on is probably Celestial because it's a 3/3 armored one. And
even that's okay.
Yeah, it's
but that's probably the worst one. Yeah. I guess the actual worst one is Holy Knight if you count that.
Yeah. Poor Holy Knight. The knight that isn't really a knight.
Yeah. They used to have 5 power.
Warrior says bad on Master Vampire. I mean threatening you wouldn't want to play this on Master Vampire unless that 4 attack matters.
That's true. That's a good point, Warrior. It's pretty meaningless on Vamp.
Yeah. Now you just want to play hunting weapons on Vampire. Right? Like
I just don't think you want to play anything on Vampire. I think you just want to attack with it and like it be good.
Yeah, but if turning the Vampire into 4/4 gives it so much more removal reach in the game. It just does. So
and not talking about the Knights, where I think this card is gonna like see more stuff is just like Prospect Bear.
Prospect Bear, Mindfog Owl, these kinds of
I don't think it's good on Mindfog.
You turn the Mind Fog into a 3/2. I guess you don't.
I'm sorry. I thought you said 3-eyed.
No. Mind Fog.
Mind Fog is okay.
I think any of the 2/2 units, like
the 2/2 ones are worse. Like,
I mean, False Demon. It's gonna be good on False Demon. Like, you don't care if the unit dies. You want to kill something with it, and
right. It's just like, yeah, it's fine. Yeah. It's fine on anything. Like, it gets bad when you're on the 0 power guys, I guess, because there's not a lot of 1 life guys that are played anymore.
Right.
Or that will be played, I assume, after they print Shepherd.
I mean, if you're obviously in the precon, just talking about from a pure precon perspective, this will be pretty good on the Ember Root, because the Ember Root will end up being a 2/2 that can do a damage.
Well, does the Ember Root Lizard get it from alterations or just from counters, its own ability?
It's status counters. But this turns it into, like, so again, I just think in the precons you can Lulu the Ember Root, and then, if the Ember Root survives, you can inflame it later. And you've got a built-in spark. It just lets the Ember Root grow and still be able to ping that point of damage every time you attack with it. It's a lot of investment, but it's also like,
it's a lot of investment to something that dies to everything.
Yeah, but in precons, not everything dies to everything. That's what I'm saying.
Two life units die to everything, though.
Yeah.
I guess maybe not in specifically the Auric matchup. Oh wait, no, they do, because Shepherd gives 2 power, right?
2 power, yeah.
Yeah, so it's bad to inflame your thing, I think. But I think like any of the 3 life units that are playable, it's insane on.
Yeah.
And all the knights it's insane on, and it's fine on like the little like Salamander Monk or whatever in certain cases.
It's probably pretty good with hunting weapons. Is probably pretty good with Pain Shaman.
It would be if Pain Shaman was playable.
Yeah. Pain Shaman's really close to playable, I think.
Yeah, it's just like we're talking about with the other thing, like it's just not good enough.
It's because it's in nature. If Pain Shaman existed in like ceremonial or divine, it'd get windmill slammed all day long.
I don't know about that. Maybe in divine, ceremonial has a lot of stuff it does that doesn't want a 1/3. I think it'd be like it'd instantly be the best unit in illusion if it cost illusion class.
Oh, for sure. But illusion,
it would be close to the best unit in charm.
Yeah, for sure. But charm just doesn't get a lot of direct damage. It's just not flavor for charm. But
yeah, I mean, obviously it belongs in nature, but it's just it's just not good enough. Like,
it's close.
Poor guy.
It's close. I keep watching for things that might like make the Pain Shaman a little bit better. So
I don't want cards that make me work to make them playable. That's
I understand
in a color that's so deep that
but it's playable just doing Anchornaut like style ability, and you make a 1/3, which is not completely irrelevant because it's hard to kill 3 life units. We know that.
Right, but you could just play a deck that has Anchornaut and Frostbector in it, and you'd be doing way better than.
I think it goes alongside those two things. Like, they're not inclusive or exclusive to one another.
Right. I think that Pain Shaman is really good in your draft deck.
Sure.
But I think it's always going to be worse than your first 30.
Sure. All right, so we did record time on previews tonight, Neil.
Did we?
30 minutes.
We spent an hour on 6 cards last time, so 30 minutes on 3 cards.
No, we spent 2 hours on 6 cards last time. 2 hours.
Well,
because we like to talk. I think these cards are just a little more straightforward, so there's not a lot of like discussion on the meta to be had per se.
I think Ember is really good, and I think we're going to see it played.
I agree with that.
The other cards, I think that everything we said about Inflame is true, but that it's probably not quite good enough.
I think it'll
outside of specific situations.
So here's what I will counter this one last time with, if you've got like a Salamander Monk, for example, and you want Salamander Monk to die, right? Like, you need it to die. Inflame gives you a way for the Salamander Monk to punch above its weight, put 2 damage on something, which is not always irrelevant, especially when there's a root armor involved. And the monk dies. And
Well, so my counter argument to that would be, with the exception of like root armor followed specifically by Fester, where you do get the 1 damage out of it, like you attack with Salamander Monk for 1,
Mhm.
and they Phoenix Form block it and leave it alive. Right? That's
Mhm.
that's the case that you don't want in this situation where you're saying you want it to die.
Yeah.
How is that different than you play this card on your Salamander Monk, attack, and it dies, and then you essentially just have the 1/1 again?
Yeah, no, but you got 2 damage on a unit that to turn on, like there's different reasons to do that, but to turn on Fester is the primary reason. I mean, in all of my weenie decks, I mean, because I always play ceremonial in my weenies as well because of Fire Archer. Like Fire Archer is so good, and so like there is a place in the weenie deck for, I think, Inflame to exist because it allows it to punch up.
I think in the upcoming meta, it will be more relevant. But right now, I don't think that I guess there's like 3-Eyed Owl, but there's not a lot of units that you care a lot about the difference between 1 and 2.
Sure. I mean, Gilder, 3-Eyed Owl, those units pose problematic problem.
Right, but Gilder, I think, like, is not great. Like, if you're playing Inflame just to kill a Gilder, I don't think you're doing very good. Because that's already what Gilder wants to do, is like soak up damage for the guys that for either Phoenix Form or the guys that it would block for anyway. So like the Gilder is still doing everything the Gilder always did.
But instead the Gilder is going to do it round over round and take another unit, another unit, and your Salamander Monk doesn't die. And
the Salamander Monk dying is not a factor against Gilder because it wouldn't die in either case, with or without the Inflame.
But you don't have to commit a second unit to kill Gilder now. Or third unit after.
Is that worth 1 dice?
I mean, it's essentially the same, right? Like, you're going to spend 1 dice to make a 1/1 body.
Right, but if you pay 1 dice to make a 1/1 body, you kill the Gilder and you get to keep the 1/1 body after.
Sure.
If you play the Inflame, like, you spend a card in hand and a dice, which is essentially, I think, the same as another unit with 1 power that would kill the Gilder anyway.
I think they're so similar. But the other side of that consideration is whether or not your battlefield is getting full.
I do think that this is good against Owl. I do think that this would be good against. I mean, there might be Ember Root Lizards and there might be Ash Spirits that this is good against.
So where this might be powerful is to play out like a Swift Messenger in your opening, and be able to, like, opponent drops Owl, you play Swifty into Owl, you Inflame an attack, and you kill the Owl. Like, that seems pretty solid.
That's fine. I mean, you're essentially starting with that, like, 2 low power cards in your first 5. The card you draw off.
But I mean, there are a lot of decks that can't efficiently deal with Owl, right? A lot of decks. Like, if you're not playing Airedale or Odette, there are very few efficient ways to deal with Owl.
Right. I think that there will be more space for this after we start seeing these 0 power unit decks, because against the 0 power, I guess that's not even good, because if they have the Shepherd, then they're 2 for 1-ing you anyway.
Right.
Or
they're like card and a half for you. Or they're blocking with Shepherd. Because the Shepherd doesn't die.
Right, yeah. I don't know about, like, I still think this is good on Prospect Bear and above. But until we see the meta full of, like, units that your Salamander Monk can kill with this equipped, I don't think it'll be worth it.
So some of the theory crafting I've seen around Shepherd has been surrounding this idea of Shepherd, like playing your O2 units, as part of your first 5, Shepherd, and then a Shield Mage. Because the Shield Mage can't be pinged away. Because the Shepherd's protecting it.
Yeah, this still beats that.
That's right. That's where I was going with that. Right. This is a potential counter to that, because,
I mean, those kind of decks, if they're good, are not going to draw in. This is my, like, pre-meta discussion.
Sure.
Those kind of decks are not going to draw in decks that want to play in Flame. They're going to draw in decks that want to play Neil or Meteor, which are decks that definitely don't want to play in Flame.
Right.
And you definitely don't want to play in Flame against those decks. Yeah. So
I still think you're going to have a good plan for just dealing with wide boards against Shepherds, against Sheep.
Yeah, I mean, Meteor's already played in a lot of decks, so I think if those Shepherd decks become good, then Meteor will just be more prominent even.
This is crazy. There's 161 decks that have the Law of Lions, and 110 people use Shield Mage. I just don't see Shield Mage that much. Wonder who's playing this? Who are you guys out there that are playing Shield Mage like this?
Well, one of them, I guess I don't know if my deck is actually built on there, but I played one in Season 1 as just like a one of.
What was your Season 1 deck? What?
It was Xander Scalds, essentially.
Nope. There's...
I don't know what it was titled, but it was a Xander.
That's looking at my decks that have Xander in it.
Even if I don't think it's on there, but it was a one of because it was a potential augury thing that was good in certain board states. That's the only one that I've ever played or seen in play.
Yeah, you'd have had to upload it because Season 1 Ashes Live wasn't live. So
I don't think that I ever did because that deck was actually bad. Shield Mage is a card that I think is interesting. I think it's a lot less good now than it was in previous seasons.
Yeah.
And I think it will both be. It will have more play once Shepherd is printed, but also then possibly less play based on how the meta shifts. Because it is very vulnerable to everything that's not like. Well, you can still attack the Shield Mage, right? Or am I remembering it wrong?
No, you can. You can definitely target the Shield Mage. It's other units. So
I'm trying to remember. Somebody tell me if I'm right.
Hold on, I'll pull it up.
Maybe you can't attack Shield Mage either.
Units you control cannot be targeted by attacks that opponent controls. So the Shield Mage is unattackable.
Okay, so yeah, so it's just gonna like eat up. I mean, I guess you just get Meteored. Because once they get to the position where they've assembled the Shepherd plus Shield Mage plus additional unit, like then Meteor's already great.
Right.
And potentially Survival of the Fittest is good against those decks because those decks don't have tokens on their guys naturally, as far as we've seen up to this point anyway.
Right.
Because Ash Spirit and Shepherd don't interact with tokens.
Right.
I guess they have Gilders, so then they will. So that's out. Never mind.
Yeah, I mean for sure.
But when you're discussing the number of players that are playing Shield Mage, that is the kind of card that if I looked at a community of a card game as a whole and not just like the top competitive meta, would be a card that everyone would want to play. I bet Vanish has a really high amount of play because that's the kind of thing that like donks love is to like your average kitchen table player likes to play the game. And the more game they get to play comes from like not winning, but stopping your opponent from taking actions.
You're 100% right. It's in 74 users have this in 96 decks.
And that it's just like how everybody loves to play Counterspell in Magic. And specifically the card Counterspell in Magic is a great card. But a lot of the bad Counterspells they print in sets now, people love to play those because they think that like, oh, my opponent's going to do something, and if I stop them, I'm doing good.
Right.
And yeah, that's the case sometimes, but a lot of the time it's not. Like, and that's the kind of card that vanishes. That's the kind of card that Shield Mage is. You know, that's why people are still like I know Vicky's good because it screws up my opponent. Like, and it just isn't. Like that's not.
I did get beat by Vicky the other night. I'm not gonna lie.
Yeah, but you're bad.
Well, let's look at tournament records, buddy.
I haven't ever lost to a Vicky.
Yeah, but that's not it. I lost to a Vicky playing a test deck, so I don't count that.
But
I haven't lost to a
I
Vicky
think that's just
competitive.
I think that's just a general mindset that kitchen table players have in every card game.
So,
And so, especially coming up to a release, if anybody's following the Shepherd thing, like obviously Shepherd makes that card way better.
Mhm.
So they're even more